Hello everybody, here we go again. Welcome to The Good, The Bad and The Rugby with me, Alex Payne. No Lord this week. He's off lording it elsewhere. Hask is back. How are you? That's a small T-shirt you're wearing.
In a very ill-fitting T-shirt. Now, normally my T-shirts do come out of a can, but someone has sent me a medium and it is cutting the circulation off the pipes. So not ideal, but Chloe's pleased. So swings and roundabouts.
It's the old beta testing of the merch. Got a little hoodie on as well, actually. Out soon. Keep your eyes peeled. It is a great pleasure this week to have not just one of the greats, but one of the greatest players of the last decade, who I have to say, you look more like a gamer than anything else this week. You've got the biggest headphones, a leather chair, sort of black mahogany setup. What are you playing? Is it a little Medal of Honor, Fortnite? What are you doing in your spare time?
A bit of online poker after lockdown.
How's that going?
Not good. I played with a sort of through lockdown, set up a games room with the lads on PokerStars, and we used to play every Friday night in lockdown. So it got me slowly addicted to online poker. Hence the chair and the headphones. Now these headphones, I just literally pulled out about 10 minutes ago. So first time wearing them, I think.
That's your Pornhub suite as well, isn't it? How many kids? You've got two kids. Trying to keep things real comfortable in there, like surrounds up. Do you know what? Before Johnny came on today, I said, Chloe went, who's your guest tonight? I went, Johnny Sexton. She went, the good-looking one. I went, and she went, the one with the beady eyes. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I held a photo. She went, oh, and that's the one with the beady eyes. And I was like, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them that. She's like, no, don't say that. He's good looking. He's very good looking. But his beady eyes, good looking.
Delighted that Chloe's done our introduction this evening. Johnny Sexton, it is an absolute privilege to have you on the show. I get lambasted whenever I say that, but it genuinely is an absolute treat to have you on board. Who is the card sharp amongst you guys at the moment? Who's cleaning up at the poker?
One of the guys that we played with cleaned up almost every week. He's actually our defensive coach at Leinster, Hugh Hogan. All my money is in his bank account at the moment. He was the shark in the group, but we learned as we went along. He shared a few of his tips. Luck is a big part of it, so I didn't have much of that either.
How have you been? 9 months of lockdown and chaos and carnage, etc. Have you enjoyed it? Have you had a bit of downtime, or are you chewing the walls and ready to get out there again?
It was a bit of everything for me. Start of lockdown, it was so uncertain and everything was so crazy. What was going to happen? What if? All the different scenarios, all the uncertainty that I hate uncertainty. I like knowing what's ahead, and it was pretty tough time, but then I got to spend some time at home with the kids. The restrictions sort of eased up after probably 3 or 4 weeks in proper lockdown here, and then once that happened, I enjoyed my time off. We got an unbelievable few months of weather here and enjoyed the time at home, you know what I mean, and got quality time with the kids, and they drove me crazy, absolutely crazy at times. Working from home, I had a gym set up in the garden. Leinster were brilliant. They basically shipped the gym out to all our homes, and I had it all set up in the garden. So trying to do weights with 3 kids running around was pretty tough going, but enjoyed it, and but it's good to get back. Good to get back playing rugby again and back with the lads.
What was the most testing part of it? Did you get involved in the home education and that kind of thing? Are you doing ABCs and Pythagoras? And where are you at?
My eldest is 6, so the Pythagoras stuff isn't coming for a while yet. I hope not anyway. My wife is a teacher, so she took the homeschooling to a whole new level, literally routine with her. So when she was doing school, I was going to get coffee or doing stuff by myself. Had to get out. The kids loved it. I think that's the big thing to take away from it. The kids absolutely loved lockdown, and now when I'm getting up going, they see me now coming down in the morning with my Leinster gear on. They're like, oh, he's going training, as opposed to just spending all day at home with us.
Was it easier to look after your kids or Sean O'Brien? Because I can imagine similar sort of levels of attention required when he used to play at Leinster with you.
More ABC than Pythagoras, possibly, for both.
Yeah, my 6-year-old will probably have the same level of education as Shawnee. Shawnee's a better farmer and a bit of a better rugby player, but I miss Shawnee. We miss him around the place. He's, as you know, Hask, you and him got on like a house on fire. You miss him around the place every day. We've lost 2 others, Rob Carney and Fergus McFadden, retired this week. So having lost Shawnee, the old lads are slowly dying off in Leinster. There's only a couple of us left, but it's we definitely miss Shawnee. I'd say he's adding a bit to the London Irish dressing room, and we miss him around the place.
He's adding quite a lot to London full stop, I think, with the way he's going about it. But 2 remarkable players who doff their cap in Leinster colours this week. Do they get chucked straight out of the WhatsApp group? Are they quietly sidled out? What's the sort of the rite of passage for Rob Kearney and Fergus? Are they lauded and clapped off into the distance, or is that cut and done?
We did something pretty cool for them a couple of months ago, kind of in the middle of the prep for the new season, because once the games come thick and fast, it's very hard to say goodbye to guys, because you don't want the build up to a game to get too emotional. And it is emotional. Like, people might look and go, emotional? What's emotional? I played with Rob since we were 15, Leinster trials at 15 together, Ferg since we were 18, 19. So it's like 20 years playing together. And so we gave them a bit of a send off about 9 weeks ago, before the games kicked off, and it was pretty special. It's unfortunate for them; they don't even get a send off from the supporters, or you always picture yourself your last game of rugby walking off and people standing up, clapping, whatever, like showing their appreciation for what you've done. And those two guys didn't get any of that, which is very sad. But we gave them a nice send off. We interviewed some former players, Drico and Isa, and their parents, and people close to them, and got a bit of a montage video for them, and that was pretty special for them. And it was a cool night. Christy Moore, you guys probably don't know him, he's a pretty famous trad music player in Ireland, came in and played a few tunes as well for him. So pretty special evening for them.
Were there tears?
It's pretty hard not to get, like, when you're trying to speak about guys that you've played 20 years with, it's pretty hard not to get a bit emotional about it. So there was a few. We got Dave to speak a bit about Rob as well. So when you're speaking about your brother, it could get a bit emotional. But it was a special evening, and it gave the guys a bit of a send off. But it's probably the worst thing from a rugby player is playing games in front of no one, and also denying these kind of legends of Leinster a big send-off. We'll probably have them back at some stage in a few months' time, and if crowds ever come back, and give them a bit of a send-off then. How
are you feeling physically? And you're into the senior category. You've been for a while actually, but you tip-top, feeling good?
Yeah, feeling good. Worked hard in lockdown. Worked hard to try and get in good shape for the season ahead, and we'll take it a season at a time. You know what I mean? It could be the end this year. There could be another year. You don't know when you get to our age, me and Hask. You just don't know. You know what I mean? Your body can go at any time, or you can lose the motivation at any time. But at the moment, I feel hungry and body feels good. So crack on.
Hopefully, at some point, you're going to go through puberty soon as well. So you should buy maybe a couple more seasons off the back of it. And you talk about motivation, Johnny. You said that most of your cash is in your defensive coach's bank account. Mate, how big is his bank account? Because if he's got all your cash, he must be like Scrooge McDuck. Because every time my motivation got bad, I'd be like that. Oh, what's the bank balance? 2 kids. Okay, I'll just keep playing.
Will my shoulders grow when I go through puberty?
Yes, they will. Do you know what? All those weights you've done, you might get some quads and some shoulders to go with it. It's fine. How is your body? Because obviously Alex asked that, but there's a few times where you've had some concussion bits and pieces. Is that been quite nice to rest that for a period of time, take a bit of pressure off that?
Yeah, I probably haven't had as many concussions as people would think, or people like to write about. The older you get, you need to work harder at maintaining your body. At the age I'm at, I wish I knew the stuff I knew now I did when I was 25, 26.
What in particular?
Well, like when you're 25, 26, you literally just rock up to training. You don't need much of a warm-up. You're never getting injured. You're never getting niggles. And now you will get niggles, or you will get injuries if you don't do everything absolutely on the money. You know what I mean? And having had a few injuries over the 15 years of being a professional rugby player, you just learn how to try and avoid them. You meet certain people along the way that you start to work with, and they're invaluable in your routine and your preparation, and you lean on them heavily. You know what I mean? Physios, and I've got a physio that comes to the house twice a week maybe. I've got obviously physios in Leinster. I've got another guy that I've rehabbed with in Santry and the King. So it's kind of just build up experiences, but you wish you knew all that stuff when you were a bit younger, and you could have made, I suppose, more out of those years, not picking up injuries then.
So many things to talk to you about, lots and lots rugby related, etc. I do want to ask the two of you about your relationship though, which, am I right in thinking that you'd come across each other before the Lions tour, but the Lions tour was a sort of a defining watershed? Has, do you want to go first?
I think, you can't play rugby and not know Johnny. The team that I found most difficult to ever play against was Ireland, especially away at the Aviva. And, Johnny's kind of been the number one man there for a long time. And we'll probably come on to this a little bit later, but some of the quotes, say for example what Brian Driscoll said about him and everything else, is that he's a fierce competitor and likes to drive standards, and will push people in his team. team and gets quite excited. So when you play against him, because he's so competitive, he'll get into your face a little bit. So I'd only ever spoken to him off the field, and you obviously get those two different versions where you sort of get the guy that's quite quiet off the field, and then you kind of get the loud player. So I'd come across him, and I didn't think we were going to get on. I just thought, we couldn't have been any different. I'm a loud gobby. He's a studied student of the game. He's talented for one. He's got all the skills. I used to just hit people for a living. It was basically, I think one of our encounters we had was the last time we played Wasps versus Leinster. And I apologise for my language on this. We always smile because Johnny still reminds me of this. I'd given a penalty. Well, I got done for a penalty.
It's my nickname.
Johnny is his nickname.
My nickname for you now is that, isn't it?
Yeah. And Johnny came running in, standard, like running in from like 30 feet. And we'd obviously played loads of internationals against each other, but I probably hadn't been for a beer with him or been for a coffee with him. Modern rugby now is very much like, wham, bam, thank you, man. You play, you shake hands, you have a couple of words, and then you disappear. So I've given a penalty away. Johnny's come running in. Fucking hell's good at that. And I got up. I was like, fuck off, sexy, you shit. And everyone's like, but Johnny's like face is just a bit like, what? I don't think he's ever been called that. So much so that like Nigel Owens was standing right next to me, and he's gone, James, go over here. And he's like, taking to one side, he goes, mate, you can't have language like that on the rugby field. I've never heard any like it. Shit, cunt. What is that? All right. And I said, well, sorry, actually, my mum taught me that. I don't think she did, right? We then obviously carried on the game. Leinster beat us. And then obviously when we got on the Lions tour and started to get on and go for coffees and realised we were sort of like kindred spirits, loved the Sappuccino, that Johnny, every now and then I get an Instagram message that just says, all right, shit. Like, cheers, pal.
Is Haskey in your book as
in my black book?
I don't know, your black book, your phone book. I don't know. He's in a few kill lists as well. I mean, your first impressions of Hask?
Well, they were my first impressions. Him calling me that, so it didn't get off on a good note. I played obviously with Ben Teo for a season in Leinster. Got on really well with him, and when we got picked on the Lions together, Ben was telling me how well I got on with Hask, and I was like, oh, I don't know. He had a bit of a run in the Wasps game, but the first thing we did when we met up for a coffee, and I spent my whole time laughing at him. Once he gets going, he's great entertainment, and we had some great times on that Lions tour. Many that we won't be able to discuss on this forum, but we will remember them forever, I think.
I won't mention his name, but there was one particular meeting where because the midweek team weren't involved, we obviously still had to attend the meetings to help learn the plays and stuff for the starters. It was the final week, and Johnny was sitting next to me, and I was like, I had basically been taking notes, quoting one of the coaches to like take the piss, basically. And Johnny couldn't believe how studious I was. I was literally writing down everything, and halfway through the meeting, he just stops and looks at me and goes, are you fucking serious? What do you mean? He goes, you're just writing it down to take the piss. He'd never seen someone work so hard but not being involved, just writing material to bury this coach and do these videos. So I think he was mildly impressed. He did point out that if I concentrated that hard when I was had a chance of playing, I might have made the team, but never mind. When you're going to prepare a good load of jokes, you've got to make sure you do the preparation.
Lions, I mean, there's lots to talk to you about, but Lions, can we start with Lions for you, Johnny? Obviously 2013, 2017. I mean, how fondly do you hold what you've done in that red jersey in your career?
Just getting picked on the tours is highlights your career stuff, and then when you get a chance to go and like meet guys like Hask and other guys from different countries, you almost have a duty to get on with each other. You make some great friends along the way, and we were obviously on two successful tours as well, or I was on two successful tours and not losing, obviously. I look back unbelievably fondly, especially at the end of a tour. They're the moments that you treasure, you know what I mean? I don't know why we spent 3 days in New Zealand after the tour, but they were absolutely brilliant crack. And same in Australia. Our flight back was like, I was getting married the following Saturday and we flew back in on the Thursday. I was like,
wow.
Laura was like, why didn't you come home straight away? I was like, I don't know. And two other guys had actually flown home. I'll get in trouble now for this, I shouldn't say this. Two lads had actually flown home straight away and I chose not to. So I had a little bit of a stag, but I arrived back on the Thursday. I had no voice. We had our pre-wedding dinner on the Friday. I was hanging for it, and then obviously got myself together for the wedding, but my speech wasn't that well written at that stage, and it was a bit of a mess. So she doesn't let me forget it anytime soon, but she didn't know the two other boys flew back on the Monday, so I better hope she doesn't see this.
Yeah, she does now, mate.
We'll geo-block this. That is unbelievable. But I suppose it goes to show the power of lives and what an amazingly good woman you've married, in that she hasn't, obviously, rib tickles, but doesn't necessarily get into too much of it. When you look back now, I mean, you talk about Hask. Who are the other guys who you thought no hope in hell that we'll form a bond with, but actually have ended up going on a Lions tour and, forming a rapport with?
I suppose in the first tour, Faz, me and Owen got on well. Obviously, there was only two of us going for the out-half position, so being your number one competition, you think, we won't get on that well, but we got on unbelievably well on that tour. We spent a lot of time with the Irish boys. We were slagging on how much time he spent with us, and then obviously carried that over to New Zealand. But there's so many guys to talk about. The Welsh boys, I got on very well with on both tours. Ended up playing in Racing with a few of them as well. So there's so many to remember. But they're the relationships that you cherish the most, because they're the ones that you don't think that will come along. You know what I mean? Like the guys in Leinster that I played with for years and years and years, your best mates with, you take a bit for granted. The guys with Ireland, same. But it's the guys that you meet that you don't know, and suddenly you're unbelievably close with them 6 weeks later.
You said that it's take season by season, game by game, etc. But have you ringed South Africa in the diary in red?
I don't think any rugby player that's playing professional at the moment doesn't dream about trying to get on that tour to South Africa. I'd be the same. I don't know whether I'd be in Warren's plans at the age I'm at, but if I can still play for Ireland, or get picked for Ireland and play well, and we can have a good season this season. We started off the Six Nations well and had a poor game against England, but if we can sort of finish off the Six Nations on a high and then carry on into the other internationals for the rest of the year and play well, maybe you've got a chance, maybe not, I don't know. You'd have to ask him, but all I can do is control what I can control, and that's try and stay fit, play well, and we'll see where that gets me.
Do you think that the rest may have extended your season, maybe also extended your career even, having that little bit of extra rest?
I think so. Like Haas, like one season tends to roll into another. Like especially when you're going to World Cups or on Lions tours, you tend not to get a big extended pre-season. This was the first time, like we pretty much had 5 or 6 months. It's like a sabbatical almost, except you didn't get to go anywhere nice. Got to stay at home with my kids all day, every day, and go slowly insane. I think from a body-wise, even from a mental point of view, hungry to get back out on the pitch and hungry to play again. It sort of showed me what life is going to be like when I retire as well, and I don't want that. I don't, I want to still go training with the boys and pretend I'm doing loads of work when I'm actually drinking flat whites down in the coffee shop, and Laura again is going to kill me, but it's a dream job. I know you speak about like your body being in a bad way, in certain aspects, but like it is a dream job, getting to do what you love to do. For me, I wanted to go on as long as I can. Again, I don't know how long that will be, but I absolutely love doing what I do.
It's interesting that once you've finished playing, you suddenly start taking up golf and going on golf holidays. That's the thing I've missed out on. I didn't realise that's where the lads go off and have the sort of same tour environment. They don't play a lot of golf, just sit around drinking. So I've now taken up golf, so I've got a legitimate excuse to go on lads' holidays. So did you play golf already?
I played golf. I played a lot of golf when I was a kid. Gave up over the last 10 years. Getting broken up on the rugby pitch doesn't help with the golf game. Every summer you're rehabbing or getting yourself right for the next season. So I don't play that much, but I will definitely. I played a little bit through lockdown, and over last week we didn't have a game, so played a little bit last week. Definitely get the bug back. And
I might suggest that you get back on it. If you want out the house and away from the kids, become a professional golfer. Just one thing in regards to your training, did you quite enjoy doing your own stuff? Did you get to do a lot of your own stuff that suited you in terms of your training, or were you dictated everything by Leinster? Because a lot of lads we've spoken to actually for once were doing all the training they wanted to do and actually felt a lot better about themselves and being forced to do kind of the grind of their club training.
A mixture of both, really. We had GPS units that we had sent to us that we had to send the data to the GPS guys and to the fitness coaches at the end of the day. So you had prescribed running sessions that you had to do. So you couldn't go and just do whatever running you wanted. And then from a gym point of view, we had programs, but there was days where, we were off. But I tended to train most days just from a mental health point of view and getting away from the kids for a couple of hours, get out, do a bit of training. And that was the times where you could do a bit of your own stuff, like a bit of CrossFit like sessions or stuff like that. So I found it beneficial. I found it really good to sort of explore other training areas. But I'd be pretty set in my ways at the same time with a lot of the rehabby kind of pre-habby stuff that I'd be doing as well for games.
I know you've won most things. I'm not sure this show's doing much for your Parent of the Year nomination. I think we're definitely dropping you out of that sooner rather than later. Am I right in saying that Brian O'Driscoll popped round to see you during lockdown and said that he thought you were in the best shape of your career? Or have I made that up?
It wouldn't be hard to be in the best shape of my career with my genetics. I worked hard in lockdown, I did. I think as the older I've got, the more I enjoy my training. At the start of my career, I hated weights, never did them. I didn't enjoy that side of the game. I just used to love getting out and playing, training, playing matches, practicing my kick and all that type of stuff. But then you see benefit in the gym stuff and you see your performances go up, and that got me into it a little bit, as mid-20s. And then as my career has gone on, I've loved training. And in lockdown, the days I didn't train, I was in bad form. I felt like I was doing nothing. The days I did train, I was in good form and in much better mood for the rest of the day. So I tended to train and train hard.
Are you quite obsessive, Johnny? I mean, a lot of elite sports people are obsessive. Are you someone who drives yourself to the point that others might look at you and think, Christ, hello?
I don't know. It depends who you ask, really. You know what I mean? If you ask someone that's unbelievably chilled out, they probably think that I'd be...
What does Laura make of your training regime and the pressure you put on yourself and the role that you have within your country's sport?
It's a good question, actually. It is a good question. It's something that I consider a lot. You know what I mean? I do put myself under a lot of pressure, and it can get on top of me at times, and it can leak into other parts of your life, your family life and, other things in your life that it shouldn't. You know what I mean? You need to park it at some stage. But when it means a lot to you, and that's where, you can come in for criticism as well when you get riled up on the pitch, or you can, let things get to you in the heat of the moment. But when you care, that's what happens sometimes. But sometimes there's a line that you cross where you kind of think it's not that important. You need to enjoy it and chill out as well. So it's a balance, really. But I probably wouldn't have had some of the successes I've had without being a little bit like that and needing to rein it back a little bit.
Do you worry about filling the void when the time comes to hang up your boots? Or will you go into coaching? Will you find something else that you can put and channel that energy into?
Yeah, I worry about the void daily, you know what I mean? Especially when it's the last year of my contract, the uncertainty around that, the uncertainty around COVID and what's the state of the game going to be at the end of the year. Will any of us have jobs? All those things be going through your mind. But yeah, the void about what I'm going to do post rugby, it's another reason why I want to keep going. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do post rugby. I probably need to get on top of that over the next 8-9 months, because if the union don't want to keep me, well, then I'm going to have something to go to. So we'll see.
Do you do much for your mental health, Johnny? You said that you obviously go and look for physios in other areas and stuff. Sometimes stuff can get on top of you. Do you work on that?
Yeah, it is an area where I suppose Joe Schmidt was probably the first one to really highlight it with us in Ireland, sort of midway through his tenure with us. And it was something that I kind of pushed away at times, the mindfulness, that meditation side of things, and he was trying to get us to do it like in a group scenario. Pushed away, and I can't remember where the sort of eureka moment with me came from, but I kind of was reading something or listening to a podcast, and I said, geez, I really need to get on top of this. I'd be quite a stressed person, like overactive mind all the time, worrying about things. It's just been like that all my life. So I think I've definitely improved on that side of my game over the last probably 5 or 6 years. And again, something I wish I knew a little bit younger, a little bit earlier in my career, the value of it. And I struggle with it still, like in terms of, using it every day. I do sort of go into that space a lot more now, yeah.
Does it surprise you how many players don't bother using it? They'll go and see nutritionists, they'll go and see top physios, they'll buy the best equipment, but they won't look at their mental health or how they can perform better. Like
a lot of guys that don't stress out or don't worry a lot or don't have, outside worries. Like there's young guys in Leinster that they don't need to do it. You know what I mean? They're still living at home. They don't have family life. You know what I mean? They're just in a different headspace to me, for example. But for me, like when I did start to use it, it was the year we had, I suppose we did the double with Leinster. We had a Grand Slam. We went to Australia. We won. We beat the All Blacks. And that was the first year where I'd really delved into it, like properly, like doing it every day, part of my routine. routine, doing it before games. And I saw a massive benefit, you know what I mean? The reason why I got into it was probably because the year previously, like, was just a poor year, like with injuries, with there was a Lions tour at the end of it. I was, stressed about trying to get on that. I couldn't string games together with my body breaking down, and it all got on top of me, you know what I mean? And it was that really that got me into it, because I just wasn't performing the way I wanted to and the way I felt I needed to, and I knew there was more in me, and that was an area I suppose hadn't tapped into that much. And it's probably something that I let slide in lockdown a bit, and then picked up. And you definitely notice improvement in yourself.
Do you ever sit down post a game with someone and or on the phone? Because when I played, for example, in a good game or bad game, I would call up my sports psychologist and I would run through the game with them. I would run through areas that I was disappointed in, because I can imagine for someone like yourself who's been a figurehead for a team, I've never had that much pressure on my shoulders, that if things are going well, then it's great, but you're the first person they're going to come to criticise. Did you ever get to sit and sort of talk about stuff, or was it just mindfulness stuff you did?
Obviously, the mindfulness is more preparation. During the week, even the visualization part of preparation. I suppose it's a really good point to ask, because I didn't really have that during my career. I didn't have someone to really go to. I still probably don't, have someone that I pick up the phone to after. With my dad, obviously, I speak to a lot about games, but the reason I would be as stressed as I am at times is because of him. So when I speak to him a lot after games, he'll say the things that I don't want him to say, and that's why I think the way I do sometimes. I'm not giving out about him. He was one of the reasons why I got into the game, why I love the game. But for example, over the last few games, my brother's watched the game in my house, and he's been here after the game, been able to talk to him, and that's the type of stuff that it clears your mind, gets all the stuff off your chest in the game. And the game might have even gone well, but like for me, after a game, I'd lie staring at the ceiling for the night, running things over and over in my head. So when you get a chance to sit down and talk to someone, it definitely helps. Sure, Lancaster's pretty good for that with me as well. He sort of sees that in me. He'll meet me the day after a game, or even after the dressing room, or in the dressing room after a game, and have a bit of a debrief, and you feel much better for it after.
It sounds like my relationship with my dad in that case, because for a long part of my career, I wanted to always get his approval. So after a game, I would call him up and I would talk about it. And you kind of call him on the off chance that he's going to say, I thought you did well. But more often than not, because they want to do the best for you, they end up saying, oh, I saw you miss the tackle, I don't think you did this. And it's like it makes things 10 times worse. So I had to find someone specifically to address these things with, because I actually stopped speaking to him about the game. And even Chloe actually had to take him to one side after one game and said, listen, you've got to stop just hitting him straight off the field with this, work on that, because it was frying my brain. If you put all your emotional eggs in, and this is quite a good lesson for parents, all your kids look at you, for parents, they have so much power and they don't realise. And after a game, all you want sometimes is an arm around them, but you don't want them to bullshit you, but they can be so cutting. And that's why I've always was like, right, do you know what? I'm going to go and have a debrief with my psychologist. We're going to look at this. I'm going to go and speak to my coaches and get objective feedback without going straight to him, because I know exactly what you mean. It can be pretty hard when that happens.
We played Wales in the Millennium Stadium. We chose to keep the roof open, and it absolutely pissed rain for the whole game. But as the game went on, basically every time we conceded a penalty and I had to take a kick off, the middle of the pitch, because the Millennium Stadium roof, even though it's open, would still cover most parts of the pitch. But basically right in the middle of it, where I had to take the kickoff, it was just like a deluge of rain. There was like sodden on the middle. I hit two like shocking kickoffs, like literally the ball just went like splat, didn't bounce, like squirted on the ground, went dead. The Welsh crowd go crazy. Do the same thing straight again. Like there's nothing I could have done. So after I called my dad, obviously disappointed, and said, oh, that was a bit of a disaster. And he goes, yeah, it wasn't great, this, that, blah, blah. And just praying, just say something positive. Say something about the good kick I did in the first half. And he goes, for the kickoffs, why didn't you just bring the ball away from the middle of the pitch? And I was like, Dad, I can't do that. Like I can't go into the tunnel and drop the ball in the tunnel and kick it back. Like I have to take it from the middle of the pitch. But it just immediately brings you to the kickoffs that you just wanted to forget. And it's the same, like England this year, I missed a bad kick in Twickenham, and like first thing, don't worry about the kicks, everything else was fine or something like that. But again, it's just mention the thing, the elephant in the room is mentioned, and just sends you into overdrive. But it's not his fault. He's not a sports psychologist. You know what I mean? He's got my back like no one else, I don't think.
I think parents always have the back and always do that. But it's like, you come off the field and you go, "Oh, that was great," and they go, "Yeah, it wasn't the best." You're like, what do you mean, right? So actually, bizarrely, this is when Chloe, she never cared about rugby, but she started watching it a bit like I can imagine with your brother. Started to understand it, knew what was good and bad, so could have an objective conversation. Because you probably know, like, some players' girlfriends who are like live and breathe rugby, and they, if they don't play well, they sort of hammer them. But I can imagine having your brother watch a game so you can come off and he understands the nuances of it. Because sometimes parents, they think if you didn't score a try or didn't make a big break or you didn't get a drop goal, I mean, obviously I know your dad's, was probably watched for your entire career and knows way more about rugby than I do, but they sometimes miss the little nuances a bit. So it's quite nice, I imagine, to have your brother there to give you a bit of a sounding board.
You hit the nail on the head, really. My brother was a really good player. He got a horrific injury when he was 16, 17 and spent a lot of time out of the game, but played at a good level in Ireland, so he knows the game, and he's a good sounding board for me. I still call my dad some like, I don't know why, but I still call him like after all games and get a synopsis or get a rundown, and I'd want to have had an unbelievably good game to come away from the conversation feeling good. But he's been my sounding board for as long as I can remember, so that won't change. But again, you got to find someone that can give you good feedback, doesn't sugarcoat things, because you don't want that. You don't want someone filling you full of shit. If you've had a bad game, you've had a bad game. It's more to probe, why you've had a bad game and how can I not let it happen again. There's different people you meet along the way, like Dave Alder would be one that you would have known from different World Cups. He's a good, sounding board for me as well, especially in regards to kicking stuff. There's no one better in the world than him, so I can always pick up the phone to him when I'm struggling with different things.
Johnny, can I ask you, it was really interesting you said that you've always been like this. Do you recognise now that sort of innate drive and desire in yourself as a kid? I mean, were you competitive at Tiddlywinks and colouring in and, hopscotch in the playground? Have you always felt sort of slightly conflicting with it?
I have two brothers, so obviously when you grow up in a house with two brothers, it's going to get competitive. It's going to be scraps about everything. So I suppose it comes from that. It comes from being around uncles and cousins that were mad into sport as well. I spent my summers down in Kerry with my uncles down there and playing golf or playing football on the beach or whatever, competitiveness there. So yeah, it's probably always been there. It's something that is in you. Why it is, I don't know, but it's there. You gotta use it. I'd rather be the way I am and have to sort of pull that back than be the guy that's unbelievably chilled out that needs to kick up the hole every Monday morning. Which way is right, which way is wrong? We're all different. It's hard to figure out. But I suppose the older I've got and the sort of more senior I've got and got like captaincy responsibilities and stuff like that, that's more when you have to change around other people, because not everyone's the same as you. There are some that are very similar. You got to be different and you got to improve as a person and a leader. I hope I've done that over the last few years. It's up to other people to answer that, but I'd like to think I've improved.
Have you been less hard on yourself now because you've been captain? Because you can't walk around feeling down about yourself because you've got to set the tone. Has that helped?
Not really. A little bit. Yeah, you got to get over it quicker. Sometimes it can actually make it harder though when you think about it. Like as a captain, you need to lead by your performances and your actions. And for example, Twickenham this year, I had a really poor game. I think I didn't recover from making a mistake that it wasn't really my fault. Bounce of a ball went over my head. Nothing I could do about it, but I let it affect me for 10 minutes maybe when it shouldn't have affected me at all. And I think that affected me more because I was captain. Again, a great learning for me. But post-game, you're down. You can't be down, like you said. You need to bounce back. You need to lead the next game. So that's where it's hard. But it hurts more as captain when you have a bad game as well. So it probably makes it arguably a little bit worse.
Can I ask you about the pressure? I mean, Irish rugby is intense at the best of times. Being part of the D4 squad, I imagine, makes it even more intense. How comfortable are you with the sort of the talismanic role that you have and the spotlight that it brings and, everything that goes with your position in Irish sport?
You see, I probably don't think about it like that when you're in the bubble. You're very much that's where you are. You know what I mean? You don't view it like that. I don't sit on the outside looking in. I'm kind of in it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. In terms of, like, I always wanted to captain Leinster Ireland. Like, so there's no point in letting it be a burden or a pressure. Like, when you get the honour that you've always dreamt about and wanted, well, then you gotta enjoy it when you're there. It comes with pressures and it comes with challenges, but like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way, and hopefully I can stay in that position until I hang up the boots. I met with Faz last year and he asked me to be captain, and I suppose it meant more to me that he asked me, you know what I mean, because he'd been in the squad for 3 or 4 years previously, and then for him to sort of see me as the one to do it going forward meant a lot. So I suppose it was for last season, we'll, I suppose, sit down and discuss what's best for the group going into next season, even though it's probably the same season. If it's me, great. If it's not, I'll get behind the person that it is, get right in behind them and help them whatever way I can.
What is your captaincy style?
You probably have to ask, one of the guys that's playing in the team. It's very hard for me to know. Hopefully, like I said, I've changed a little bit, not too much, because you got to be true to yourself. But at the same time, there's guys that are 20, 21 that were kids watching Leinster and Ireland when I was playing, like, you know what I mean? So you've got to treat them a little bit differently to how, for example, when I was 26, 27 and playing with Brian, Leo, Shane Jennings, all these senior guys at Leinster, I could throw the toys out of the cot a few times and they'd just say, oh, that's Johnny, he's fine, just ignore him, he'll calm down eventually. And then 2 days later I'd still be fuming and they'd be like, it takes a week sometimes. You can't do that anymore because the younger lads look up to, we talk about Rob and Ferg, like those lads. We've got other senior lads, Scott Fardy, Devin Toner, Sean Cronin, Cian Healy. Guys look to these guys to lead, and we have to lead by example, off the pitch as well as on.
Brian O'Driscoll said of you, Johnny is the most stubborn man I know. He said to me one time that 75% of the time he's right, and for the other 25%, I'll tell people that I'm right. True?
No, lies.
But it's interesting, the angry Sexton. Do you see it and recognise it? I mean, do you feel it? Are you aware of it at the time, or is it just the way you deal with things?
Sometimes I look at the video after and I go, oh man, what am I, like, lost ahead? What am I doing? Like, you know what I mean? But like at the time, you're in the game, you don't really think about it. Like, you're in a competition, you're trying to win, and that's where like. We spoke about me and Hask and our first encounter, and I presume he would have thought of me a certain way. Obviously, we then had a load of coffees and played together on the Lions, and we got on great. You know what I mean? Once you have respect in your dressing room from your teammates, like, that's all you can ask for. And if I have that, I'll be happy. Like, I'm not going out there to make friends. Obviously, look, there's stuff with the ref where I've let boil over at times and let myself down the odd time, but you learn from them and you try and get better.
I wondered if you were developing your captaincy style, like very much like you go out and practice your kicking. I wonder whether you had looked into the way that you wanted to be as a leader. At the top of the show, when he said, "What do you think about Johnny?" I said, "There's a quote here from Brian O'Driscoll." He said that your captaincy style comes across as confrontational, and you've got an antagonistic character that doesn't help in dealing with the referee. But my point is that, forget a bit about dealing with the referee. I've always found you as a confrontational player, someone who really cared about what they were doing, someone who's very passionate about that. But obviously, when you get a position of leadership, have you tried to develop, have you looked at other leaders and other people you aspire to be, or do you just want to be a natural captain?
A little bit of both. I think Stuart and Leo in Leinster, Andy Farrell in Ireland have been brilliant for me. I think part of it is recognising it, like actually is taking a step back and realising how you're acting or behaving can sometimes be detrimental to your teammates, as opposed to motivate them or inspire them or whatever you want. And you think you're trying to do the right thing, but you need to understand yourself and where that comes from. And did a lot of stuff with Stuart in around that, some insights profiles and where you sit in that, and came back as there's all different colours to describe people. I was red as my as my colour. Obviously blue is the opposite, and you'd like to be somewhere in the middle, but I was sat firmly in the red. When you know that, you can then go about, okay, how can I get to the other place and try and improve yourself. So the captaincy has probably forced me to try and delve into those areas. You know, when you're not captain, you don't have a responsibility to do those things, and you can just do whatever you want, and it's up to the other captain to pick up the pieces. When you're in that position, you got to, like I said, you got to be true to yourself, but you got to improve, and you got to improve as a person and a leader.
Absolutely fascinating. Still to come, we're going to talk Paris, Lancaster, Leinster and Ireland, but you are listening to and watching The Good, the Bad and the Rugby on 21/6 Sport with me, Alex Payne, alongside Hask, and the Leinster and Ireland skipper, Johnny Sexton. A pleasure to have him on. Don't forget, you can sign up to our social media, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. It's the first place you'll find out about our guests, our competitions, events, and the rest. Just type in Good, Bad, Rugby. We're pretty easy to find. And it's also where you'll be able to track down the Nords, who had some good stats for last weekend's European Champions Cup semi-finals. A new member of our team who will load you up with all of your pub ammo. Leinster. Is Leinster the best production line of rugby talent in the world right now?
Look, we're very lucky that we've got a good school system that we can pick players out of. All these schools they're like competing against each other for kids to go to their school. You know what I mean? So they want to have the best like rugby facilities, you know, going so that their parents send them to these fee-paying schools, and we're very lucky to have that. But what I would say is that we've always had that for as long as I can remember. Those schools have been there, but Leinster haven't always been successful. The times that we have been successful is when we've had a very special coaching group, and that's the difference. You know what I mean? When you've got good coaches, they can take the young guys out of school and they can develop them and make them into top class players. And when we've had that, we've been successful. I suppose big credit has to go to the senior coaches, but also the academy coaches that are nurturing these guys, because there's guys coming in every year that they're ready to go. You know what I mean? They're ready to play, and it's a credit to all the coaches involved.
Talking of schools rugby, tell me about the 2002 Leinster Schools Cup final. I
was a 16-year-old, so I was like, obviously, a couple of years. I was in fourth year in school, playing with the 6 years. I played the semi-final because the 6th year out half I got injured, and I thought I played pretty well. I was fuming that I wasn't going to play the final, but I came on in the final for about 10 minutes, pissing rain in Lansdowne Road. Got a drop goal at the end. The last time we won it, my school. So it's been a barren patch since. My brother's actually helping out with them this year, the senior cup team. So hopefully they can win it again this year.
I'm just interested. Was there a moment in your career when it clicked, or when someone said to you, Johnny, you've got what it takes here? Do you remember that point?
Some guys they're playing for England at the age they're playing at, like you talk Owen Farrell, George Ford, these guys were playing for England when I was only getting into the Leinster Academy. You know what I mean? Because I came out of school, I was horrendously out of shape. I wanted to be a professional there, but I had no idea what that took. I ended up working, first year out of school, worked in a bank with the St. Mary's rugby coach, the club that I was playing for, gave me a job in the bank. So I was working full time.
Doing what? What were you doing in the bank?
Like a hassle like this one. Like I was like at a computer answering calls to like farmers, like Sean O'Brien, who were basically looking for finance for like Massey Ferguson's and like John Deere tractors. And I basically had to type their details into this computer system. It was like a credit system that like to see if they were like legitimate or if they paid back their loans. The majority of them had. It was like 0 if you paid back your loans all the time, and then 1 and then 2 if you miss it like 2 months in a row. And like these guys would be ringing me looking for 40, 50 grand for a new tractor, and I'd type in their details and just be like 0, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So it was just like no chance of getting any credit. So that was what I spent my year doing. And then I was playing well for the club that I was playing for, and like I'm 19 at this stage, you know what I mean? Guys are getting capped for, like I speak about Owen and George, like getting capped for England at that age, and I was working in a bank, and I got
stopping farmers getting tractors.
Sean O'Brien
shutting down the agricultural industry.
Sean O'Brien talks about that time he jackknifed the tractor and he spent his first paycheck. I think he reckons he bought it outright, so I don't think he was calling up Johnny Sexton Credit Control. Hello, Johnny. I
could get arrested for this, but once I had people's name, date of birth, I could basically find out their credit history. So like I was able to go in. I remember a good friend of mine, Peter Smith, who's like player coach. I had his name and date of birth, typed it in. I was like, came up to training on the Tuesday night. I was like, what's that house you're on in Killiney? Like, you missed a repayment on that 2 months ago. And he was like, hey, that's private information. I love that. So, yeah, it had some perks.
Well, have you wiped your credit rating? Have you got the best credit rating in Ireland? Johnny Sexton's got a perfect 5-star credit rating that seems to be fixed forever.
It's like the Jason Bourne of financial services.
Yeah. Mate, that's why his headphones on. He's still been at the laptop just doing it now. He's still probably got the same login, so they probably haven't changed it.
Gareth Steenson actually was ahead of me for the Irish under-20s, and I think he got injured, and the coach for the Irish under-20s saw me playing for St Mary's in the club game, picked me for the Irish under-20s, and then when I got picked for the Irish under-20s, the Leinster Academy kind of felt, well, you kind of have to bring this guy in now. So I kind of got in that way. And then my first game for Leinster under-20s, Michael Cheika came to the game and had a good game, came up to me at the end of the game, tapped me on the shoulder. I was sitting down the side of the pitch and he just goes, mate, see you at senior training tomorrow. And I was like, sorry? I'm literally in the academy for a month, and he got me to come along. So he obviously saw something and put a lot of faith in me over that couple of years. But it still took me 2 years to break into the Leinster team, because Felipe, who was like a superstar for Leinster at the time, was playing 10, like Gordon Darcy at 12, Drico at 13, and there was no space for me. So it took me a while to get in. I had to buy my time, and it took me a while, but then got a break when Felipe got injured.
Is that the first European title?
Yeah, so we won the first European Cup that year. Yeah, when Felipe went down in the semis, I played a couple of the pool games at the start of the year, but then halfway through the year, I found myself back playing club rugby again. Luckily, I didn't have to go back to work in the bank, but I was back playing for the club team, St Mary's. A few games and then snuck my way back into the Leinster team of playing well for them.
I want to ask you about 2009 and winning it, because Munster had done it twice, and I know the rivalry was incredibly intense. But for you, coming in that year, and not only coming in, but in the semi-final and then in the final, I remember you walloping an enormous drop goal. Can you remember the emotional roller coaster of a guy, finding his way in a European final, surrounded by the stars that you were playing with?
Yeah, it wasn't probably as big a shock for me as it was for everyone else, because despite all the ups and downs, I had played a lot of the season before. Gordon Darcy had a broken arm, so I played at 10 a lot, and Felipe went to 12, and we won the league. So I sort of felt in my own head I'd made the breakthrough a year previously. But when you play in a Heineken Cup semi-final, I think everyone watches that, as opposed to the league games that not everyone would see that as big a spectacle. So it wasn't as big a breakthrough as it was for everyone else. Everyone else was like, who is this guy, blah blah. I was like, well, I won the league last year for Leinster, but no one seemed to give a shit. I knew Leinster were going to win a European Cup under Michael Cheika. We too many good players, and we were so driven to do it. And my biggest fear was that they were going to do it, and I was going to be sat at home, watching it. That's what spurred me on into being there on the biggest days. And I was preparing all the time for what happens if. I started working, like Has said earlier, sports psychologist, started working with one, that year, and Cheika had brought him in, and we always said, you got to be ready when your break comes, you got to be ready, and he was just hammering it home every week. I was doing everything that needed to be done, and thankfully was able to take the chance when it came.
I remember that game, actually. I've worked a lot with Shane Horgan over the years. I remember him and Alassana Tuolangi having a bit of a ding-dong. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we had a tactic that day, basically to kick it in behind Tuolangi, every time. So the first half I was literally just trying to get it in behind him every time, just making him turn, making him work back. And I think Shane sort of bumped him into touch, maybe marginally late, and he kind of pointed at him, and then about 20 minutes later just ran straight over the top of him. Basically all week Shane was saying to me, like I said, the tactic, get it behind him. But Shane was like, you better not hit a bad kick, because if it goes straight into his hands, he's got a 40-meter run up at me. And he was some size of a man. Manu is probably the smallest of them all. I only played against two Tuolagis, and Manu's absolute handful to tackle, but he's by far the smallest. So you can imagine what the others, when they're standing opposite you, what's that like.
How did you find working with Michael Cheika? Because I obviously had experience working with him in Stade Francais, but he's had a bit of a bad rap since Australia. I really rate him. How did you find him?
He was brilliant for us. In the years that he was in Leinster, he was exactly what we needed. We needed someone to come in and strip back everything. He got rid of a lot of players that had been around a long time, but in his eyes weren't adding value. He kept the core of top class players, and he basically brought in young Leinster-born players that desperately wanted to play for the province. You won't mind me saying, but he was tough work at times, but he, especially to the young guys, and we used to say to him, oh, well, you never give out to him for, making a mistake, but you always give out to me. And he goes, he'd just say, yeah, mate, because he's got 50 caps for Ireland, you've got none, so shut up and get on with it. And it was like, okay, well, that's fair enough. He used to say it. He goes, they've earned the brainy points to get away with a mistake or two like that, but you haven't. He was brilliant. He was a real player's coach in terms of like hands-on, wanted you to improve. He had David Knox there with him, who was a crazy character, but absolutely brilliant coach. And they were very different personalities, but it worked like absolutely perfectly. They turned the place around, you know what I mean? We were sort of serial underachievers, won one trophy in 10 years previously, and he came in and changed the place and then paved the way for Joe to come in and take us to a different level.
Did you ever find that he would always try and stand at 10, knock you out of the way and start carrying the ball if you were ever playing all the time?
We used to always warm up with a proper game of tip, and literally he'd just hog it. He was terrible at 10, but he properly fancied himself. Talking about the Ella, like Mark Ella, Gary Ella, there was about 100 Ellas, and he'd be just mimicking what they used to do. But he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He taught us what hard work was, what winning was, what a good culture was, and he's a huge part of why Leinster have won what they've had over the last 10, 15 years.
It's interesting you mentioned Joe coming in, so I want to ask you about 2011 as well. How many times have you told the halftime story?
A lot, but again, you've mentioned his name 100 times on this show. Brian O'Driscoll. And it was because he said something after the game in the post-match interview that everyone just latched onto. It's the same now, like when he's talking as a pundit about games, and the minute he says something, everyone just latches on. Oh, that's right, Brian said it. It's like the word, the gospel, according to Brian. It's only because he said it. It wasn't that big a deal. We were very lucky with Leo, the captain we had. Brian obviously was captain of Ireland, but not captain of Leinster, so he was very much a leader, and Joe and the other coaches spoke at halftime.
You're very good at winning at Leinster. You've won a lot of trophies. How good are you at celebrating?
I've got way better at it over the last few years. That's one thing that you've got to do. You got to do well, and one thing we probably missed, having won the Pro 14 this year, and we won it for the third time in a row. No crowd, no one to celebrate with. No, we weren't allowed to have champagne on the side of the pitch. We weren't allowed to have beers. We were like home. Everyone go home to their own houses. No one allowed to meet up. It takes away from winning a little bit, and kind of shows you what the special times when you win something, what that used to be like. It was brilliant, and it's the times you cherish most. When you talk about the Lions tours, like we did earlier, those few days celebrating post-tour were absolutely brilliant. That's why you play harder. That's why you play to win, because you get to have those moments.
You've spoken a lot about your mentors in terms of performance and coaching and psychology. Who was your best mentor when it came to celebrations? Because you played with some proper old guard at Leinster.
Rory Best was pretty special.
So Best.
Hask put something up on Instagram the other day of Bestie in the bed. I'd say I looked at that picture 100 times that day. But Bestie, just unbelievable stamina and ability to just go again. A bit like him as a rugby player, just able to keep going. Like other guys, the night of a game or the night after, you can name 100, but Bestie in terms of day 4, day 5.
Because Johnny, you were sort of the ultimate professional until the job's done, and then you would let your hair down, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I like to think so. There's very few that don't. I don't think. When you work so hard for something, you gotta celebrate it. You gotta celebrate it hard.
I want to ask you about Stuart Lancaster as well, because obviously over here he's had a tough time, but in Leinster he's sort of reborn, rejuvenated, and had extraordinary success with you. And I think probably without sort of the pressures of the public eye, has gone back to doing what he does best. But can you just give us a bit of an insight into your relationship with him and the impact he's had with you and with Leinster?
He's been brilliant since day one, since he's come in, and it's amazing the margins we speak about. And I know I sometimes say this in press conferences, and you see all the media guys and they're shaking their head, giving me the line that we're told to say, but the margins are so small. In terms of Stuart, I remember we won under Joe Schmidt. We won 4 out of 5 games in 2 Six Nations in a row, and we won 2 Six Nations titles. England also won 4 out of 5 games both those years, and we beat them on points difference. The margin's there. Then he goes to a World Cup, obviously the Welsh game. the penalty on halfway could have gone to England. Owen Farrell kicks it from 50 as opposed to Dan Biggar, and England go and get to the semi-final or final or win it, and he's in the job for the rest of his life. But things happen for a reason, and maybe that all happened so he could end up in Leinster, and he's appreciated here and players love working with him. I think he learnt as well from the England job. Some of the stories we would talk to the English guys on the Last Lions tour, they'd be like, wow, like we didn't see that side of Stuart because he was probably stressed at the job. But with Leinster, he's just hands-on coach, and he's been absolutely brilliant for us. Like I said, I couldn't speak highly enough about him. A huge part of what we've done over the last few years has been down to him and Leo as a good team.
It's brilliant to hear, and everyone loves this comeback story. We say it often. How have you found Leo going from captain and teammate? He's been coach for a while now, but was that an easy transition for you?
It was a challenge, definitely at times. We've had our ups and downs, we should say. When
you say ups and downs, is that because you were challenging him with him wearing a tie and a blazer?
It was both of us challenging each other. Like there was times where, Leo sat me down and said what I was doing wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? And I need to step it up. And that's obviously a very different dynamic to what it was like when we were playing together. You know what I mean? Like he was my captain for whatever 7-8 years with Leinster and got on unbelievably well, but the things change. But the biggest thing we have in common is that we both want Leinster to be unbelievably successful. We have a great relationship now, but obviously at the start, we had a really poor season when he first came in, and I probably didn't go about things in the right way in terms of, I got asked a question in a press conference. It was like a leading question, but I didn't hold back, but they used the question in my answer. Basically, they said, is the culture not what it was once? And I said, well, maybe, yeah. And I kind of expanded on it. And then the headlines in the paper was Leinster culture all over the place. And it basically looked like I went to town on everyone. I suppose a little bit of it was a chance to say what I thought, a little bit was, but I shouldn't have. I should have had voiced those opinions in-house first, but it was made look worse by whoever asked the question. Yeah, they went to town a little bit and took me a little bit out of context. It was a tough year that year. I'd just come back from Racing, a culture that probably isn't where it is now. You see them now, they seem to have a really good culture, but the 2 years I was there was very different, and I was just couldn't wait to get back to Leinster, and I got back to Leinster, and it just wasn't what I had left, really. You know what I mean? But again, you speak about learnings. I should have gone about, how trying to change those things, should have gone about it different at the time.
Why did you go to Racing? Cash money only, or was it a chance to test yourself, or had you grown stale at Leinster?
No, it was nothing like that. You see, it's a different system here, because the clubs don't contract you, the IRFU contract you. And at that stage, I wasn't shy in saying I didn't want to leave Leinster at the time. I've said it publicly that basically it came down to a bit of a dispute with the union, and I said, well, I'm not staying if this doesn't happen. They said, well, it's not happening. I said, okay, well, I'm going then. I was kind of calling each other's bluff, and I won/lost. The losing scenario for me was getting to go to Paris and experience something different, learn a new language, different culture. And I'm glad I did it in hindsight, even though it drove me mad at times. I've heard Haas talking about his experience with Stade Francais on this podcast before, and it's just different. You know what I mean? I wish I could go back and do it again. In terms of, definitely do things differently. You live and learn. I had a great 2 years, made some mates that I'm still in touch with now.
What would you do differently, Johnny?
It was sort of since I come back, and I played with a few guys that had been in France, and they were sort of you can't fight them. You got to go with them. And that was basically the exact opposite of what I was doing. On one hand, the president had signed me, and he's like, I've seen you at Leinster, you do this and this, and I want you to come here, and I want you to teach these guys, that you have to train hard. And so I obviously turn up day one, and I'm like, right, let's go. I just come back from a Lions tour, got married, obviously 2 days after coming back from the Lions tour. So I just played a full season, 2 weeks holiday, and then they put me straight into a pre-season friendly, and I wanted to show that I cared, and that I'm here for the right reasons, and I played the pre-season friendlies. But in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done what the other Lions guys did and taken a few weeks. But anyway, that's another small point. Really, I went in and I was trying to get guys, to train properly and trying to teach them. But like, because my French wasn't great at the start and my body language probably wasn't great either, I didn't hide things well. Yeah, it was a bit of a recipe for disaster. So I'd love to go back again and try and work with them and sort of ask them, why do you do this way or this way, and be a bit better. But when I came back to Leinster, I was like, right, I'm not going to make the same mistakes as I did in Racing. I'm going to come in and try and like bed my way in. And whereas actually the way I went to Racing was how I should have come back to Leinster, and the way I was back in Leinster, I should have been in Racing. So you can't win, is the moral of the story. It was a brilliant experience for me and Laura. In hindsight, more of a life experience than rugby experience. Like the first year we got to the semi-finals of the top 14, which with the squad that we had was a pretty good achievement, because we had a lot of injuries that year. Second year we got to the quarters of Europe. We lost to Sarries last kick of the game, and we got to the quarterfinals of the top 14. We didn't win anything, which is what I sort of set a goal when I went over to try and win something. So I was a failure from that point of view, and I think everyone else brands it as a failure. Like I did my best, and that's all you can do really at times. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have been the most popular, amongst some of the French contingent. That's life. You know what I mean? You move on, and thankfully we've turned a corner with Leinster over the last number of years, and we've had some success again.
Does it bother you the way that sort of, I mean, there's so much success in your career. Do the bits that aren't covered in silverware bother you, or can you compartmentalize it?
Yeah, sometimes you wish, like, you think about the ones that got away, or the finals that you lost, or the quarterfinal last week, I suppose, but they're all part of a story, really, like, you know what I mean? And the hurt that you feel for a few years, from a couple of failures spur you on to the next one, the next victory. So you probably can't change things, in hindsight, or you wouldn't change them. Like I said, if someone had sat me down when I was 20 working in the bank and said, you're going to become a professional rugby player and you're going to win this, I'd have snapped their hand off. But when you're in it, you're kind of, nothing's ever enough, you know what I mean? And you want the next one and the next one. It's as you want, you know what I mean? It's a hard one to take.
Have you scratched that itch for travelling? Or do you think if, for example, I know you're taking it one season at a time, but do you fancy going abroad again, maybe Japan? Like, obviously I have 3 kids now who are all settled in Ireland and have loved their schools they're in, and they got great mates. And I suppose the hard thing for me would be, we don't know what state the unions are going to be in at the end of the season, or halfway through the season. If the unions say, look, Johnny, we actually can't keep you, we just don't have the finances, or we think we need to move on, and I really desperately want to keep playing, well, maybe I will. I don't know. It's a long time away yet. In 4 or 5 months, see how the body is, see how the mind is. But at the moment, I feel good. I want to stay in the game for as long as I can. But you got to, at some stage, go when you can't hang on right to the death, and you're making an idiot of yourself. You gotta go at the right time. But when is the right time? I don't know. I feel good at the moment, so crack on. So never say never, but I'd love to finish my career here.
You said earlier about what a great relationship you had with Owen, particularly starting off in that 2013 Lions tour. At Racing, obviously, you had Ronan as your coach, didn't you? I'm just interested as to how your relationship with Rog developed from rival to coach. And actually, I suppose, talking of grand tours, he's laying a pretty good pathway around Racing and Christchurch. And I think, where is he now? South of France somewhere, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in La Rochelle, yeah.
La Rochelle, that's right. What was your relationship like with Rog in the early years through to him as a coach?
It's been well documented. It came full circle, really. Like, we started off on 2 ratty enough characters who met each other in Thomond Park for the first time when things were obviously heated, and had a bit of a falling out, which continued on to Croke Park. Then when we were competing for the Irish jersey, I think we became friends. I wouldn't say good friends, but friends. When you're in the kicking circle, you go kicking together like every day. You have your day off, you go kicking together, spend a lot of time together. It invariably leads to lunch after kicking, coffees. It wasn't always like that, but it sort of progressed into that.
Did it ever get competitive in sort of practice kicking? I'm sort of thinking Days of Thunder, where they start screeching around in the hospital. I just wonder whether the two of you were over there at midnight still trying to land a penalty from halfway. No, we didn't do
we
that.
didn't do that when we were playing. We used to do that when he was coaching Racing. It was actually invaluable looking back on it, where like he was the last person on earth I wanted to lose to. He was coach, like we were still competing against each other on the training pitch in Racing, and he was still as competitive as ever. Sometimes I used to give him the ladies' tea, so he didn't have the distance in the legs anymore. So I used to let him go sort of same angle, but maybe a couple of yards shorter. It was invaluable, like, to have him over there for those 2 years, because the sounding board, like after games, you know what I mean? Because it was frustrating at times. It was great, some great times, like, you know, when things were going well, but some frustrating times, and it was amazing to have him there. We became, you know, Laura and Jess, our wives, became great friends. Like, I had my first kid in Racine or in Paris. He was there for that, and you know, we became good friends. Obviously now he's obviously coaching in La Rochelle, busy with that. He's in the pundits section in Ireland now. So he's, you know, it's tough, because like, he's obviously his job to criticise me or criticise the team, and that can lead to, you know, me not being too happy or whatever. But you get over that, you know, because ultimately you've got friendship or ultimately like good respect for each other.
We could talk about your Ireland career for so long, but I want to ask you, Soldier Field 2016, the emotions that brings back now.
It was huge for me. I think the winning, like, I know a lot of guys hold that one as one of their most special days in an Irish jersey. That was in around the time that I just spoke about previously, where I was really struggling with my body. Like, I was like picking up niggles and injuries, and it was again in that game I went off after like 60 minutes. Like, so it wasn't as fun for me, because when you're not on the pitch at the end, or if you've come off early, you feel a little bit deflated. It was, I suppose, for me, the highlight was when it beat New Zealand to sort of go the year unbeaten after we just won the Grand Slam in Dublin, beating them for the first time in Ireland. I'd hold that much higher, but it was still a very special day. Like, the whole week was a weird week. Preparation-wise, not great in Chicago. Like, we flew over on the Tuesday for a Saturday game. We were all still like jet lagged, like night before the game. I remember the day of the game kicked off at about, I think it was like 5 or 6. I was up at like 4 a.m. Like, just hadn't got over the travel, and sometimes you get your victories when you least expect them. That was definitely one of them. I don't think we expected it, but there was something in the air in Chicago. I think it was the Chicago Cubs or the Bears, or one of those teams won the baseball for the first time in like 130 years, and we were like, if there's going to be one weekend we're going to beat the All Blacks, it might as well be this one. It was a special performance, considering we were missing like Shawnee and Pete. Actually, we're told, Joe Schmidt just said they were just coming back from injuries, but like normally be the first 2 guys in the team sheet, and Joe said to them both, no, you're staying at home. And they were like, not even like on the bench or traveling. They're like, no, get yourself right for the home game. We were playing them the week after at home.
Yeah.
And I think Joe in his mind thought, like, you know, give them a rattle in Chicago, but we'll get Shawnee and Pete back for the home game and give them a good game then, or that'll be our opportunity. So it's amazing how things worked out.
When you beat them in Dublin, was that 2018? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I just remember watching that and thinking, I mean, there are games that stand the test of time in terms of the physical nature, and I just wonder whether that is up there with the kind of game which you will never forget because of the intensity, because of what you guys had to go through as a team, and because of, you know, how it washed up in the end.
It was up there with, like, atmosphere-wise, like, hands down the best atmosphere I've played in, like, in an Irish jersey, like, by a mile. From minute 1 to the right to the end, it was just incredibly special. Even the way we approached the haka, and we did something a little bit different in terms of we broke the 10 and sort of took a few steps forward and led from the middle up. Rory obviously in the middle as captain. We sort of set down a marker a little bit like England did in the World Cup quarter-final or semi-final. It was just a special day, and it sort of capped off that whole year. Like for the Leinster boys, we'd won the double Grand Slam, one in Australia, and then to beat the All Blacks in Ireland for the first time ever. It was, I suppose, the ultimate year, really. I think that's why it made it even more special.
As I say, there's so many things to talk about. The other one I've got to ask you about is the drop goal in Paris. The same year, actually, wasn't it? Never in doubt or hit and hope? That
whole, like, 4 or 5 minutes just proved to me, like, how fickle, like, being an out half is. I spoke to friends or brother after the game, and they were like, we were cursing you when you did the crossfield kick, because like, what are you doing kicking the ball away after 80? And that's the sort of life you live, like as a 10. Like you do something, you try it, you've got perfectly good reason in your head, because we weren't going anywhere else with the ball in hand. Like we needed to get into their half, and you take a bit of a risk, but it was a calculated gamble. And if it didn't come off, like, I'd have been absolutely slaughtered. If you take the drop goal and you miss, absolutely slaughtered. But in my mind, it's like, it's now or never. We'd just gone. I didn't know how long we'd gone at the time, but I knew we'd been gone a long time, and like, guys were starting to drag ours a bit, and guys were knackered at the end of a game. So I had to take the first shot that I had. But again, if you miss it, people are, why did he try from there? You needed to be more patient. For me, as sweet as it was, you kind of take it with a bit of pinch of salt sometimes and go, there were so many instances in that sequence of play where I know that on other times it won't go like that, and I'll get hung, drawn and quartered. That's what I take out of that 4 minutes.
But surely that makes it even better, knowing that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, and you've got to play your way and own it, because the press and fans are always going to knife you.
It does. In terms of with your teammates, even, you know what I mean? When you go through a phase like that, you respect each other so much more after, because, you know, to do something, like, I'm talking about everyone, we watched it back together as a group afterwards, and it's amazing, like, how, like I spoke about a few minutes ago when we spoke about, like, would you change anything, you know what I mean? And you say you don't change things. The time we played New Zealand in the Aviva, I think it was in 2013, and they held the ball for like 4 minutes, 10 seconds, something like that, scored in the corner to beat us, touchline conversion that they got 2 attempts to take, touchline conversion to win, last kick of the game. Like, everyone was devastated. But what we took out of that was, like, Joe Schmidt got obsessed with 4 minute 10. So every time we were at the end of training, we used to try and keep the ball for 4 minutes 10, or we try and defend for 4 minutes 10, or we'd do something fitness drill for 4 minutes 10. This was the new number. Like, we need to be able to live with teams for 4 minutes. We trained like that for how many years? 5 years. And 5 years later, we go and break our record for 5 minutes 20 or something it was in the biggest occasion. So it was a very special moment for us as a group to sort of do what we've been training for so long. And for it to come to fruition was pretty special.
I'm going to ask you quite a curious question, but do you enjoy it?
Yeah, massively. Absolutely love it. Like I said earlier, like, to get up in the morning, go to the gym, go play rugby with your best mates. Like, obviously there's pressure and there's high stakes, and it's, you know, it comes with a lot of, like, criticism, and it comes, like, with bad times as well, with injuries, and with, like, when you lose form off the back of an injury or whatever. Being a soccer player, golfer might pip it, but like, getting to do what you love to do is, how can you not enjoy it? Like, you know what I mean? But, like, there is challenges within it, but I wouldn't change anything for the world. That's why I'm still playing now, and why I want to keep playing, you know.
That is so good to hear, because actually we've done a lot of interviews recently where people have sort of said they're doing it but not loving it. It's very good to hear from one of the world's best saying that it is the dream job.
I think it's obviously really important that you enjoy it, and I'm interested that Johnny says that, because I tried to relate earlier what it must be like to be a talisman for a side like Ireland, where, you know, it's obviously a big place but a small place in terms of the rugby fans and the intensity that you face. And I can imagine that when it's going well for Johnny Sexton, it's a great place to be. But I can imagine if Ireland aren't going well and you haven't had a good game, I can imagine it's a tough place to go. And I think it's nice that through all of that you can turn around and say you genuinely love what you're doing. And I think it shows, because I think lesser characters probably would have folded up, because it's fair to say that you do get a bit of a mixed ride, I think, sometimes in terms of the media.
Yeah, like everyone does, like, you know, like, they build you up to knock you down, like, essentially. Like, I'm not having a go with the media, like, it's their job to do that, but like, it is a challenge. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, like, there are tough times. Like, for me, injuries just break me, you know what I mean, in terms of mentally. Like, you know, I just wish you could play this game without being injured. And I know you spoke about your injuries and your body, and yeah, there's times where you feel like you've been hit by a bus, and you feel like, you know, and they are the challenges in dealing with the credits. So, like, it does come with challenges. I suppose I've got, like, I referred to my brother again, who, like, would have given anything to be a professional rugby player, was arguably better than me, but just didn't get the breaks and he got the other breaks. He broke his leg horrifically and had like 5 operations to fix it and nearly lost his leg. Like these type of things where it makes me, when you do get criticism or you do go through a bad run of injuries and you're getting slated by everyone, that you sort of look and go, well, you're still doing this, you know what I mean? And he'd remind me of that as well, you know what I mean, regularly.
Do you ever feel misunderstood by like the public or the media?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But like if you get too bogged down with, and I do get bogged down at times, but when you get too bogged down with them, there's nothing good that can come of it. Like you got to go with your teammates and your coaches, and they'll all give you like, look, they've often told me, you know, you're out of line, or you know what you did wasn't right. You know, they'd be the first to say it. That's where you go, yeah, hold your hands up. Yeah, I got that wrong. But like sometimes you just can't win. Like, you know what I mean? Like during the Six Nations this year, they asked me about criticism and I answered their question. And then like all over the papers, like it was like me talking about the criticism as if I was like, oh my God, I can't win. But like they asked me about it and I was like, I thought I gave a reasonable answer, but it was like Sexton more worried about criticism than his own form. I was like, oh, here we go. Sometimes you just got to take it with a pinch of salt and just work with those that matter to you. But like it is a challenge, definitely is a challenge.
There are still a number of chapters to write, obviously in your boots, but when the time comes, coaching, media, travelling, or farm machinery insurance, where are you going to be in 18 months' time?
Sean O'Brien better hope I'm not in farm. You too, Hask. You've an obsession with JCBs and tractors. I don't know. I suppose sometimes when you try and plan for life after rugby, you feel like you're taking your eye off the ball a bit. Get right now what's important, and for me, that's, you know, trying to stay in good condition, look after the body and mind, and try and play as well as I can to keep the dream going for another year or another year or two. We'll see. You get inspired by other players that have had long careers, like, you know, saw Richard Wigglesworth playing for Saracens the other day, playing incredibly well at 37, and he wants to play for another couple of years. I played with Brad Thorne in Leinster for 6 months. So when he was 38, Nathan Hines, Paul O'Connell. I don't want to think about life after rugby yet, even though I know it could be around the corner. But like rugby coaching, it definitely appeals to me. Trying to be captain, you've learned a lot with, you know, dealing with other players and the people that would help me if I did go into coaching. But again, will I travel with my kids and traipse them around the world like Rog has done? I'm not sure. Will I go into the media like a lot of guys before me? I don't know. Never say never, but I prefer to go into coaching if it came to the two of them.
Pop a fiver on you as head coach of Munster in 3 years' time, shall we?
Yeah.
Very good.
He's not even denying it. There's not a denying it. He's like,
when there's nothing he can say. He can't say yes and he can't say no.
You said you're not sure about the travelling. At the start of the show, you said you need to get the hell out of the house. It's impossible for you to retire because if you spend any more time with the kids. So I think you just want to play that stuff down. Maybe there might be a bit more travelling in your future. There is one area that I just wanted to cover, because you said about Stuart and his role, and obviously, Alex touched a little bit on it. What does he do for Leinster that's so positive? Because obviously he said there's a little bit of the player management stuff with you. Why is he so good for Leinster? I'm really intrigued by this.
I think he knows, or he says himself, that like he got away from what were his strengths with England, because I suppose the role he was in kind of pushed him to an area that he didn't really want to be in. And he came to Leinster as very much assistant coach, and then within a couple of months was then sort of head coach, and Leo kind of went to that director of rugby role. He sort of eased his way into everything, you know what I mean? Because you can't come into an organisation and just change everything. He came in and he said, look, I've watched a lot of your games over the last couple of weeks because I've got the job, whatever. And he says, one area I think we can improve is this. And he took charge of that. It was our defence, basically, and took that out. But then as that was going on, he was sort of getting more involved with our attack and just our overall way of playing the game. And it's just hands-on coach. He doesn't have to deal with the selection issues or the media issues, because Leo deals with all that, and it just allows Stuart to be a coach. But he's very good, like motivator as well. He'd strike me as someone that like is obsessed with sport, loves to like watch other sports, was to watch shows about other sports like The Last Dance. He would have watched that and showed us clips from that. We'd all watched it probably anyway, but showed us clips from that, showed us clips from, the Patriots winning their 6 Super Bowls, showed us clips from Liverpool winning the Champions League, like taking interviews, taking clips and sort of showing us the vision that he had for Leinster and motivating us to get there. And that's his biggest strength, really, along with the hands-on coaching, and he's been brilliant from day one.
My interest behind it was purely because when we came, because obviously when he worked with the Saxons and worked with early days of England, I always found a very hard-working, very kind of amenable guy who was very good at coaching. Obviously, and like we talked about it last show about how I think in England job takes you away from that. But when we met up on the Lions tour, we were talking and shooting shit about lots of subjects, and one of the things came up about was Stuart at Leinster, and you boys always raved about him. But I think we were probably, the conversations probably went on for about 2 minutes. Then we would take the piss out of Shawnee for never getting off his phone and for chatting everyone up. But we didn't really pay much attention to the details. So I'm just intrigued to know why he's had such a good impact. And as you said, probably because he went back to doing what he does best, which was coaching, which was motivating, which was implementing his plan without any other stuff that would derail it.
When you're in the game, like not outside like with the media and the punters, like watching the game, like when we played against England for Ireland, like we struggled big time against Stuart's teams. Like they beat us numerous times, and he put a team together. You know what I mean? So I think we kind of saw that in Leinster, like as from an Irish point of view, we were like, well, Stuart Lancaster always played unbelievably well, unbelievable brand of rugby with England against us. We found it incredibly hard to play against. So surely he's going to be good. As opposed to in England, sometimes it's all about that World Cup, where they see everything that went before him or went before that. You know what I mean? Building a new team, winning 4 out of 5 games and 3 championships, but not winning the trophy. Like, you know what I mean? We probably saw that as opposed to everyone in England who just saw the World Cup failure. That's just all they want us to focus on.
How does a stressed out, intense Johnny Sexton unwind? I want to know, what do you do to get some of this out of you? Because Cian Healy makes knives and does barbecues and stuff. What do you Jamie Heaslip gets qualifications, Sean O'Brien drives tractors. What the hell are you doing behind closed doors to take a bit of pressure off when your dad's called you up and gone, yeah, you were shit?
It's a challenge, Hask. And it's something that I probably struggled with, like when you got young kids, like, you know what I mean? And you come home like that, and you come home like pissed off, and then suddenly you're like hit with 3 kids and they're going crazy. It can be good in one way, but it can be a challenge as well when you're still in training, like your mind is still at training, or your mind is still at the game where things have gone badly. So again, like, how do I do it? Like I've got a lot better at trying to break up my life into different areas and trying to be present at different times in whatever I'm doing. Now, I'm not very good at it, but I try and map out my week, trying to make sure that when I'm home, I'm home. When I'm recovering, I'm actually recovering and not thinking about getting home or, getting to meetings, or like I'm properly in it and being present. And that's really it. Like, I'm fairly normal, like come home and spend time with my family. Like, I'm not doing anything too crazy to try.
You're not doing the Peter O'Mahony lawn, like because all these pressures are coming out somewhere. Like, mine's like coffee making and DJing. That's how I unwired. Peter O'Mahony's like the perfect lawn. There must be something in the house. Maybe it's the online poker. Maybe it's a little bit of gaming. Maybe you should go into a dark room and give yourself a Chinese bird.
I got Pete was in my house just after lockdown, and I've got AstroTurf, like grass, obviously, for the kids, and he just couldn't stop shaking his head. It was like blasphemy. Like, what the hell is that? Pete's got his own issues with that garden.
There are a lot of issues around by the sound of it.
Yeah, there are. Everyone's got their own issues.
I think what I didn't ask you is about where your World Player of the Year award is, because I think that was the last time I saw you on stage in Monaco, and probably officially the worst acceptance speech of all time.
It ruined the night for me. So I was a bit sick that day, travelled over, little bit hoarse. But then when we were on a jet on the way over, there's about 30 people on it, but everyone was kind of talking over each other. So as this flight's gone on longer and longer, my voice is starting to go. Get to the hotel, sort of go to bed for half an hour or whatever in the middle of the day, wake up, feel a bit better, but then go to this reception before the awards ball, and it's like literally hundreds of people screaming, trying to speak to the guy next to you, you have to scream. My voice just went, like literally went. So I had to get Bestie to come up with me to say a few words, which I was like frantically typing. Like obviously you didn't know who was going to win when we were going over. So like I had nothing written down, nothing thing. And then as my voice was gone, and then Laura was like, what are you going to do if you get called up on stage? I was like, what? Like I was typing to her, like she was right beside me. I was typing on my phone, like, I don't know, like I need to sort this out. So sent Bestie a message saying, will you come up with me and basically talk for me. Like my voice went like totally. I literally got the award, left the hotel, went straight to bed and just went to sleep.
Where is the paperweight now? Does it hold the bank statements and the gas bill?
It's in the my little display over there.
The display. You tried.
I literally have ever won. Like it is.
You tried to play that down. You were like, it's in the, and you're like, but off camera, there's a whole room of like Heineken cups, trophies, shirts. Like, it's in the display. Like, I bet there's a fucking whole wing.
It's in the, it's on the mantelpiece, but it is. Like if you got it at an under sevens sports day, like, you'd be disappointed. It is literally €5 in some trophy shop down the road. Like it was definitely nice to win.
Due recognition for a remarkable year and a remarkable career as well. John, it's been great fun. Are you happy just before we go to do our quick shoot from the lip? 10 questions?
Yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, here we go. Question number 1, what's your favourite word?
What has called me in the Aviva. I can't even say it. Like I've got kids.
Keep the same language. What's your least favourite word?
The same.
Greatest moment in the game?
Grand Slam 2018.
Worst moment in the game?
World Cup 2019. All of it.
Favourite swear word?
What has called me in the Aviva.
What sound or noise do you love?
As we're talking, it's Shawnee's voice. Like literally love and hate it, but you miss it. You miss it around the place. Like literally, you could hear him anywhere in the world. Like
he texted me when I posted a picture of him and I went roommate stories. He went, you better not have any fucking roommate stories about it. And I messaged him, don't worry, I have any. He goes, because I'll fucking come over there and I'll fill you in. And he's like high pitched, I'm going to fucking do you over. I was like, relax, Shawnee. I'm as hard as a road. Relax, pal. Take the foot off the gas.
That answers question 7 as well. What noise do you hate? Question number 8. What profession other than your own would you love to have attempted?
Golfer.
Pro golfer. If you could do a road trip with 3 players, who'd be in the car?
Fergus McFadden. Sean O'Brien. Be a close one between Hask and Theo, I think. Hask and Theo, they would just bounce off Shawnee, both of them. It would be a mixture, one of them, undecided.
I dread to think where you'd end up. Question number 10, final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome.
Pretty strong.
Thank you for fixing my credit rating.
Johnny, one absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much indeed. Go well. We'll look forward to seeing how it all unfolds over the next few months for you. And
Thank you.
I reckon you'll be all right in the not too distant future as well. So I'm not going to worry about you too much. Thank you very much, Steve, for coming on. Just before we go this week, I wanted to say a very quick, it's a doff of the cap really, and to pay our respects to Sergeant Matt Rotana. You'll have all read in the news. There's not a lot really that we can add other than he was a proper rugby man and a man doing incredible things in the line of public duty. It's senseless, it's ridiculous, but just our very best to his friends and family. An impossibly difficult time. And while we're mentioning people in the line of duty, I had a note the other day from some friends of PC Daryl Mayers, who is heavily involved at Newquay Hornets Rugby Club, who's had a very tough time of his own. I'm sure you can Google it if you'd like to, not my story to tell. But Daryl, just want to wish you all the very best in your recovery. Hang on in there. I know it's a bit tough at the moment, but we send you all our very best. And we have a table reserved for you, front row seats to whenever our first live show takes place. So hopefully we'll look forward to meeting you before too long. That is it for this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to The Good, The Bad and The Rugby. Please do subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in Good, Bad Rugby and please do leave us a review as well. Thank you to Hask. Thank you once again to the great Johnny Sexton. Look after yourself and your family. We'll be back in 7 days' time as we go across the pond. So don't miss that one.